I stood at the edge of the grave, the wind jerking at the collar of my coat. But I wasn't cold. My body was just empty. They say funerals bring people together. They say loss reminds you of who matters. That's a lie. A well-dressed, polite lie told by people who've never had the ground ripped out from under them. My father was being lowered into the ground when she walked up beside me. Not slowly, not solemnly, not with a look of sorrow, or even a shred of humanity. She had a presence like a boardroom executive, not a widow's daughter-in-law. No tears, no tremble, just that thin line her mouth makes when she's already moved on to the next thing. She didn't speak until the priest muttered his final words. Then she turned, opened her clutch, and handed me an envelope with one manicured hand, like she was giving me a receipt after dinner. I didn't open it immediately. I watched her instead. I saw how she tilted her chin toward our kids, Dylan, 14, and Haley, 11, who stood further back, faces blank, hands clasped like they were waiting for a school bus. Not like they were burying their grandfather. Not like they were watching their family fall apart in real time. "Open it," she said softly, but with that surgical calm that made her sound like she was enjoying every syllable. Inside were divorce papers, dated, finalized, already signed by her, property agreements, custody arrangements, financial transfers. Then the knife. "Your family's fortune is mine now." I didn't react. I don't know why. Maybe it was because I was holding dirt in my hand. Dirt meant for my father's grave. Maybe it was because I had stared down corporate takeovers and courtrooms full of wolves and never once flinched. But this felt like dying without the grace of finality. Then she leaned in, just enough so no one else could hear, and whispered, "They're calling him Dad now. We're taking his last name. You're just history." And that's when Dylan turned his back on me. Haley followed. Neither looked at me, like I was a stranger loitering too long at a public event. I stood there as the crowd dispersed. Nobody said anything. Not one hand on my shoulder. Not one eye meeting mine. They all knew. She had been planting this for months. Maybe years. Every dinner I missed working late. Every trip she couldn't join me on. Every polite deflection when I'd ask about her day. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a coup. The next week passed like a fever dream. She moved into a mansion I didn't know she'd bought. In her name, using assets from my family's company. I'd left everything in her hands for convenience. She'd taken everything with surgical precision. I didn't call. I didn't text. She didn't either. Neither did the kids. Then came the phone call from my attorney. "There's something you need to see," he said. "It's not over." He showed up at her new estate, envelope in hand. As she and the kids toasted with glasses of orange juice by the pool. Yes, there were pictures. He handed her a single document. Just one. And that was when Haley screamed. Screamed like someone had flipped the world upside down. She ran to the gate, phone in hand, called me with shaking hands. "Why didn't you tell us?" I didn't answer immediately. I watched them from my car, parked just outside the tall white fences of their new life. Then I said it. "You made your choice. Now live with it." And drove away. But that's not even where it truly begins. She showed her teeth when she smiled, but it wasn't happiness. It was triumph. The kind of smile people wear when they think they've won something they don't understand. And she thought she'd won. She thought the house, the money, the kids, the life she peeled off me like skin, was hers now, sealed and done. She didn't know I'd started digging. The truth came in layers, like peeling old paint off a wall and finding rot underneath. First, it was Thomas Granger. Not just some guy. A name that appeared on a fake lease, 3 wire transfers, and a separate holding company connected to one of my father's old accounts. She hadn't just stolen my life. She'd used my family's trust fund, the one meant for Dylan and Haley, to buy her new beginning. The man she called stepdad in front of my children wasn't some new flame. He was her boss. Or he used to be, before she fired him from my own company with a forged signature from a power of attorney I never signed. That was the second layer. I had no idea she'd submitted legal paperwork 2 years ago, back when I was in the hospital for surgery. She had a friend, a notary who owed her favors, and just like that, she'd gotten access to everything. I called Dylan, not to talk. I just wanted to hear his voice. He answered, confused. "Why are you calling?" That hit me harder than anything else. I didn't have an answer. I just said, "You okay?" "We're fine," he said. "Thomas is teaching me how to drive." That name again. That was the first time I lost control in public. I punched the wall of my office so hard I fractured a bone. I didn't even feel it until my assistant screamed. I told my lawyer to file the reversal. Quietly. I wasn't just going to sit there and watch her wear my name while she fed my kids lies. I wasn't going to let Thomas Granger take my place in their memories. There were things she didn't know. Clauses in the family estate. Old trust fund rules. Quiet but powerful protections that kicked in when fraud was suspected. She thought she'd covered her tracks. She hadn't. 3 days later, a process server showed up at her door during a brunch party with Thomas's colleagues. She opened the envelope in front of everyone. That was deliberate. The expressions on their faces were priceless. I didn't see it in person, but I got the photos. The trust was revoked. The mansion was never hers. The accounts were frozen. The cars were repossessed within 48 hours. And her new life came crumbling down. That night she called me. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. She didn't even say hello. Just, "What did you do?" My answer was calm. "Took back what was never yours." "You think this changes anything?" She snapped. "They're still my kids. They love him. They don't know who you are," I said. "But they will." Then I hung up. That night I didn't sleep. Not because of sadness, but because for the first time in weeks I wasn't drowning. I was planning. It started with a package. No return address. No note. Just a black flash drive taped to a folded receipt for a diner I hadn't visited in years. The place where I took her after our first ultrasound. Haley wasn't even born then. Felt like another life. I didn't plug it in right away. I stared at it for hours, just turning it in my hand like it might bite. When I finally opened the files, my world tilted. Videos. 6 of them. Quiet, grainy, time-stamped over the past 14 months. All in the same hotel room. Same 2 people. Her and Thomas. But it wasn't the betrayal that twisted my gut. It was how ordinary they were. Laughing. Eating room service. Wearing pajamas. Playing board games. Making a whole life in a rented space. While I was home, making dinner for our kids. While I was sitting at parent-teacher meetings alone. While I was building a life she already left. Couldn't look away. I watched every second. Every mundane betrayal. It was like studying a crime scene and realizing the killer smiled the whole time. But the last file wasn't video. It was audio. A recording of her voice, on a call, talking to someone. Not Thomas. A woman. Her voice was clear. "Honestly, once I get the house and the trust, he can rot. He's too stupid to see anything coming." The woman asked something I couldn't hear. My wife laughed. "The kids? Please." Haley already calls Thomas Dad. When he's not around. "Dylan hates that loser. They'll get over it. I mean, come on. I'm giving them an upgrade." An upgrade. I sat there with my head in my hands for 20 minutes. Not because of her. Not even because of Thomas. Because my daughter had been calling him Dad. And I hadn't even known. That's when I made the second call. To my private investigator. I wanted everything. Every bank she'd touched. Every lie she told. Every coworker who covered for her. Every time she said she was at yoga and ended up in another city. I wanted it documented, dated, verified. And I got it. By the end of the week, I had a binder so thick it needed clasps. My lawyer flipped through it and raised an eyebrow. "You ready to burn it down?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm ready to build something better from the ashes." Then he told me something I wasn't expecting. "She's planning to leave the country." "What?" "She bought tickets. New passports. New school records. One of her friends is a travel consultant. She's trying to vanish with the kids." I didn't move for a long time. She wasn't done betraying me. She wanted to erase me completely. She wanted them to forget I ever existed. So I did something I never thought I'd do. Called her. "Let's meet," I said. "Just you and me. No lawyers. No games. 1 hour. I deserve that." There was a pause. "Why?" "Because you're about to do something you can't take back." She laughed. "I already did." And then she hung up. But she showed up anyway. She always loved a good show. She walked into the cafe like she was still on top of the world. Big sunglasses, white blazer, phone in one hand, car keys in the other. like a walking commercial for her own ego. No eye contact. No hesitation. Just sat across from me like we were exes catching up over coffee instead of war generals meeting on neutral ground. The second she took off her sunglasses, I saw it. That twitch in her cheek. She'd heard something. She knew something had slipped. But she didn't know how much. "Did you really want to talk?" she said, stirring a drink she didn't order. "Or did you just need closure?" I didn't answer right away. I opened my folder, slid one of the printouts across the table. Her laughing in that hotel room, time-stamped with the same date she'd told me she was flying to a conference in Miami. She didn't blink, didn't even look at it. "You went through my private life," she said. "No, I went through the ruins of my life. The one you detonated." She leaned back, smirking. "So, you gonna cry now? Make a speech about loyalty and trust." I took out the second paper, the ticket reservation. One-way flight, 2 adult passengers, 2 minors. Departure in 6 days. All under a fake last name. That one made her pause. "You followed me?" she said, quieter this time. "No, you're just really bad at hiding your tracks. And I'm really good at protecting what's mine." Now her jaw tightened. "I knew you'd react like this," she said. "That's why I didn't tell you. You're unstable. Obsessive. You can't let go. I wasn't the one filming fake family moments with a man I stole millions with." She slammed her glass down, the clink sharp enough to make the barista look over. "You don't get to shame me," she hissed. "You left me alone in that house for years, buried in your stupid job. You didn't even see me disappear." "No," I said, "because I trusted you." She scoffed. "That was your mistake." She stood up, already grabbing her phone. "This was a waste of time," she said. "The kids don't want you. Thomas is giving them everything they need. And in a few days you won't even be able to find us." I stayed seated, watched her walk away with that same practiced, victorious stride. She thought she'd won again. She didn't know about the injunction I'd filed that morning. Emergency custody, passport hold, court order preventing international travel with minors. She didn't know she'd already lost. By the time she got home, the sheriff's deputy would be waiting on her porch, with paperwork. She'd learned the hard way that not everything can be taken without consequence. The war wasn't over, but for the first time the battlefield was mine. The call came just after midnight. I was awake, sitting on the floor of the guest room I'd been crashing in, surrounded by case files, court transcripts, and one of Haley's old drawings I found stuffed in a book, a little house for stick figures. One of them had my name above it. That was from 3 years ago, before everything cracked. The phone lit up with her name. I let it ring, then again. Finally, I picked up. "You dare file something behind my back?" she barked. "No hello, no pause. You humiliate me in front of my children." "They're my children," I said, "and you were about to smuggle them out of the country. Did you think I wouldn't find out? You're disgusting." I let the silence sit, let it stretch until I could almost hear her pacing. Then I said, "They're not leaving this country, not now, not with you. You think a judge is going to give you full custody? After all this? After what I have?" "What you have," I said calmly, "is nothing but lies and a boyfriend who committed financial fraud using a trust meant for 2 minors. I hope he's worth it." That shut her up. Not because she felt guilt, I don't think she's capable of it, but because she realized I'd been digging deeper than she thought. The court order had already gone through. She wasn't going anywhere, but I hadn't told her the rest. That came the next morning. She showed up at my lawyer's office in a storm of rage. Thomas was with her but stayed outside, like a shadow waiting for instruction. She marched into the conference room like she was expecting a fight, and she got one. My attorney handed her a document. No words, just a manila folder with one headline on the front. Petition for temporary sole custody. She flipped through it, hands shaking now. Not from fear, from disbelief, from realization. "You're not taking them from me?" she whispered, voice suddenly soft. I leaned forward. "You already gave them up." And then, the moment I hadn't expected, she broke. Not crying, not begging, but laughing. Real, unhinged, bitter laughter. "Oh, you poor idiot," she said. "You really think they want to be with you? Haley told me you scared her. Dylan doesn't even like talking to you." You're clinging to something that's already dead. I didn't respond. I didn't flinch. I just opened my phone and played the audio. Haley's voice, from the night she screamed. My PI had recorded it when she spoke to the officer during the injunction delivery. "I want to talk to my dad," she said. "My real dad." Jessica's face didn't crumble, turned to stone. Then came the moment that told me everything I needed. She stood up, yanked the folder off the table, and threw it across the room like a tantrum-throwing child. "You want a war?" she said. "You've got one." Then she stormed out. Thomas didn't look back. The next step wasn't revenge. It was rescue. The hearing was set for a Friday. Rain hammered the courthouse windows like it had something to prove, like the sky itself was angry on my behalf. I sat in that narrow hallway outside the courtroom with my lawyer beside me. Tie loose, eyes heavy, heart somewhere between fury and fear. Jessica walked in 15 minutes late, wearing a fitted navy suit that probably cost more than my car insurance. Thomas wasn't with her. She didn't even glance at me, just strutted past like this was a networking event and not a custody battle. But I had something she didn't. Truth. The judge, a tired-looking woman with steel in her eyes, flipped through our files for a full minute before anyone said a word. Then, she looked up and said, "This is not a fight over property. These are children. Let's start acting like it." My attorney went first, laid out everything. The fake documents, the unauthorized transfers, the fraudulent passport applications, the audio files, the recordings, the conversations with the children, logged by the court officer who served the injunction. Jessica sat through it all with a smirk so thin it looked stapled to her face. Then her lawyer spoke, tried to paint me as unstable, vindictive, emotionally manipulative, said I was weaponizing the kids because I couldn't handle rejection. But the moment came when the judge cut her off. "Your client attempted to relocate 2 minors internationally under a false identity. That is not rejection. That's criminal behavior." Jessica finally spoke then. Her voice didn't tremble. She leaned forward with that performance she always saved for high-stakes moments. "I was trying to protect them from him," she said. "They told me they felt unsafe. I didn't want them to suffer." "Did they tell you that before or after your boyfriend signed checks from their trust fund?" my lawyer asked, dryly. She snapped. "You think I planned this? You think I wanted this mess?" She shouted. "He's a paranoid narcissist. He let work run our lives. He ignored me. He gave me nothing but silence." That silence filled the room now, thick and sour. Then the judge asked her the question I'd been waiting for. "Where are your children now?" Jessica blinked, looked around, uncertain. "They're staying with my sister." "No," I said. "They're with me. They came to my place last night." I didn't even have to look at her to know the shock on her face. I could feel it, taste it, because the night before the hearing, Dylan had called me. Not for help, not for money, but because Haley had overheard her mother yelling at Thomas, screaming that they should have left sooner, that I had ruined everything, that the kids were collateral damage and too soft to understand power. Dylan didn't say much. Just, "Can we come to you tonight?" I didn't sleep. I made up the couch and guest room. I let them eat ice cream for dinner. I sat with them while they played a quiet game of cards and didn't ask a single question. Because they had chosen, and that choice was what shattered her. The judge granted me emergency sole custody. Jessica would have supervised visitation only. No travel, no relocation, no contact without approval. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared at the floor, as if the floor might open up and give her a way out. But there were no exits left. That night, as I tucked Haley in, she whispered, "You're not mad at us, right?" I kissed her forehead and said, "No, baby, never." Then she asked, "Why didn't you fight sooner?" I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know how to tell her I'd been fighting for years, but I'd finally started winning. Winning wasn't a victory lap. It was silence. Long, stretched out silences filled with questions I didn't know how to answer. It was Dylan waking up at 2 a.m. just to check if I was still in the house. It was Haley pausing before calling me Dad. Like she had to relearn what the word meant. The day after the hearing, Thomas showed up at my door. No warning, no call, just the sound of a car door slamming and a knock at the front. I opened the door and found him standing there with his hands in his coat pockets. Not smug for once, not superior, just nervous. "I didn't know she was going to do all that," he said, like a kid explaining why he broke the neighbor's window. "She told me. It was already over between you two. I didn't invite him in. I didn't offer a seat. I just stared." He kept talking. "She said you didn't care about the kids. That you cheated on her years ago. That she stayed because you begged." I didn't respond. He looked down, shifted his weight. "I'm out," he said finally. "I left last night. She's losing it. You need to be careful." "She already lost," I said. "And I don't need warnings from you." He nodded like he expected that, turned around, got into his car, drove off. Just like that. That should have been it. But she wasn't done. 3 days later, I got a message from the school. Jessica had tried to pick the kids up without authorization. Security escorted her off the property. Haley saw the whole thing. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She told the principal, "I want to go home. My home." Jessica showed up at my place that evening. This time, I didn't let her pass the porch. "You're brainwashing them," she hissed. "You think you've won? They'll see through you eventually. You're a liar. You're a coward." I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I just said, "You've got 5 minutes before I call the cops." She stood there, hands clenched, teeth grinding. "I gave you everything," she spat. "No," I said. "You took everything. Then you tried to sell it." She turned to leave, then paused. "They'll hate you when they're older." I shut the door. Dylan was standing in the hallway. He'd heard everything. I looked at him, bracing for something. Anger, confusion, anything. But he just nodded once. "She doesn't know anything about us." That night, we sat together on the couch. No phones. No noise. Just Dylan, Haley, and me. Not broken. Not perfect. But finally, free. Freedom wasn't peace. It was reconstruction. Quiet, messy, relentless rebuilding. We didn't celebrate. We adjusted. The mornings became softer. Not because they were easy, but because there wasn't screaming anymore. The kitchen smelled like actual breakfast, not burnt coffee and resentment. I packed lunches for Haley. Dylan started waking up on time without me knocking 3 times and raising my voice. There was a rhythm forming. Fragile, but ours. But Jessica wasn't vanishing. Not yet. She appealed the court decision. Filed motions. Claimed emotional distress. Said I was manipulating the children. Accused me of fabricating evidence. Her lawyer tried to drag every piece of my past into the courtroom like deadweight. It didn't work. The judge dismissed every motion. Every stunt. Every last desperate swing she took missed wildly. She showed up to the final review hearing looking like a ghost of herself. Too polished, too poised. Like someone playing a role she no longer believed in. She avoided my eyes. She didn't speak unless spoken to. And for the first time, when the judge read the final custody arrangement, she didn't object. She didn't fight, because the kids had spoken for themselves. Dylan had written a letter. He handed it to the judge directly. Haley had drawn a picture. A new one. Our house, 3 stick figures. The 4th one had a big X over it. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. After the hearing, she waited outside the building, like she wanted a final word. I walked past her without stopping. She called out, voice hoarse. "They're going to forget what I did for them. What I sacrificed." I turned around, met her eyes. "They'll remember everything. That's the problem." She didn't follow. She didn't try again after that. The house felt different that evening. Lighter. Dylan asked if he could invite a friend over for a movie. Haley made cookies from a box mix. I let her pour way too many chocolate chips in. The dog we'd been fostering for a week, a wiry mutt with no manners and a heart the size of Texas, slept under the table, feet twitching. There was no ceremony, no announcement that the war was over, just a quiet understanding, sealed with laughter and the smell of cheap, sugary dough. Later that night, I checked my email. A message from my lawyer. Short. 1 line. "She filed for bankruptcy this morning." I stared at the screen. Not with satisfaction. Not with glee. Just stillness. Because she had taken everything that mattered or thought she had and tried to cash it out. But the one thing she never understood? You don't own loyalty. You earn it. And she never earned theirs. I shut the laptop. Outside, it was raining again. But this time, I didn't feel like the sky was falling. It was the phone call I didn't expect to take. But I did. The number came up as unknown, and something in me, maybe that old habit of still hoping for something to make sense, made me swipe. Her voice was calmer than it had any right to be. "I'm in a shelter," she said. "Just outside Columbus. Thought you should know." I didn't respond. I waited. I lost the condo. The car's gone. Thomas vanished. Apparently, fraud charges make a man pretty slippery. And my sister won't return my calls. She paused like she expected me to say something comforting. I didn't. "I'm not asking for money," she said quickly. "I just wanted to talk." "To talk?" I repeated slowly. "After trying to abduct our kids, rewrite our life, and bleed my family dry, I made mistakes," she said, the phrase mechanical and hollow. "No," I replied. "You made decisions. With precision. With help. And with no regard for the people you claim to love." There was silence. And then, finally, her real voice broke through. Not the actress, not the schemer, the scared one. "Do they hate me?" It wasn't a question for me. She knew the answer. Still, I told her the truth. "They don't. Not yet. But that window is closing." She exhaled sharply, like she'd been holding that breath for a long time. "I just wanted more," she whispered. "Something that was mine." "You had more," I said. "You had a family, and you traded it for status. For a man who used you. For lies you built so high, they collapsed on top of you. Do you think I can fix it?" she asked. "No." The word hung there like a bell ringing through fog. "Then why are you still on the phone?" she asked. I didn't have a good answer. Maybe I wanted her to hear the silence she created. Maybe I wanted her to sit in it. Finally, I said, "You called for closure. Here it is." Then I hung up. Later that night, Dylan came into the living room with his laptop. "I'm applying for a volunteer mentorship program," he said, "for kids with complicated home stuff." I looked at him. My son, taller now, quieter, hardened in ways I wish he didn't have to be, and nodded. "That's good," I said. He looked at me for a long time. "You think she'll ever come back?" he asked. "I think," I said carefully, "she already left. Everything else is just shadow." He didn't say anything else. Just closed the laptop, leaned back on the couch, and looked out the window. Haley was outside in the yard, playing fetch with the dog, laughing. Oh, there was still healing to do. There always would be. But the storm had passed. And for the first time in a long time, I knew which way was forward. Spring came quietly that year. No announcements. No grand gestures. Just the slow bloom of things once thought dead. The dog, now officially ours, with a name Haley picked, Chance, chased squirrels along the fence line. Dylan passed his driver's test. I found an old jacket of mine in the back of the closet that still smelled faintly of cedar and memory. And it didn't hurt to wear it. Life didn't bounce back. It unfolded cautiously, like a hand that's been clenched too long. One Sunday, I took the kids to the lake. No phones, no distractions. Just us, sandwiches packed in a cooler, a couple of fishing rods, and silence that felt earned instead of strained. Haley asked, "Do you think she thinks about us?" It was the first time either of them had said her name. Not Mom. Not even she. Just a ghost. "I think she's thinking about herself," Dylan muttered, skipping a rock with clean, practiced flicks. I didn't correct him, because sometimes the truth is heavy, and kids shouldn't have to carry it. But they already are. Back home that night, I sat with a letter. Unopened. No return address. Postmarked from Ohio. Her handwriting. I didn't show it to them. I didn't open it, not then. I burned it the next day. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. She'd said everything she needed to say. I'd heard it in the courtroom, in the hotel videos, in the lies stacked like cards she thought would never fall. And in the end, she was right about one thing. There was a version of our story where she won. Where I worked too late, missed too many signs, and she walked away with everything while I watched from the ashes. But she underestimated one thing. I didn't break. I adapted. My children didn't disappear into her narrative. They chose truth. They chose the man who stayed, who cooked burnt waffles, who sat at their school plays, who didn't always have the right words but showed up anyway. And now I sit in the quiet of a house that is mine again. Not because a judge said so, not because a lawyer won a case, but because the people in it chose to stay. To anyone reading this, anyone going through betrayal, through loss, through the kind of manipulation that makes you question if your memories were ever real, let me tell you this: you don't have to set the world on fire to get justice. Sometimes all you need to do is survive long enough for the truth to outrun the lie. And when it does, you'll know. Because silence, real silence, not the kind filled with fear or regret, is louder than any scream she ever made. That silence is peace. And it's mine now,